Despite being surrounded by a crowd of people mingling and clinking glasses, Jessica seemed to create an invisible bubble of isolation around herself. Chapter 1. I ran into her at a business dinner. She was lost in thought, her raven black hair falling to reveal a SW-like net. She was noticeably colder than before, her gaze towards others being like unmelted snow on a frigid landscape. Perhaps only when she looked at Alex did that snow melt into the warmth of spring and she didn't notice me. When she saw me staring at her, she merely lowered her eyes with a hint of annoyance. A companion murmured, "That's Jessica." He smiled with a seductive smile. Jess returned from overseas and took over the family firm. I've heard she's an Oxford graduate, and she made a big impression on the board. She's surely not just the coolest rich child. Pretty, right? Chas, the stereotypically wealthy girl, is being pursued by many men who want to go say hello. I remained silent, but my head was filled with images of Jessica. Jessica, 17, had skin so pale that it was nearly translucent in the sunlight, eyes that were constantly slightly smiling, and a voice as calming as a spring stream. She said it was a far-off memory that was now nearly forgotten, but it felt as clear as if it had happened yesterday. I put down my drink and said quietly, No, it's okay, let's go," at which point Jessica's eyes swept over and then suddenly fixed on me. She was stunned. Then she pushed through the crowd and began to walk quickly toward me, eventually breaking into a run with her heels clicking loudly. Her voice was shaking with surprise as she exclaimed on the floor, "Michael," and her eyes appeared to be dread-rimmed. I pretended not to see and turned to leave chapter 2. We were born in the same hospital, so we had a typical childhood friendship. Jessica had always been proud of her family, believing that everyone else was beneath her since elementary school. She received a love letter, but she never read it, instead tearing it up in front of the boys and throwing it in the trash. She had every right to be proud of her family's good looks and intelligence. At the age of 3, she started reading the Oxford Dictionary, and by the age of 11, she had broken into her father's business firewall to steal confidential documents, which both enraged and impressed her father. Despite this, Jessica was more reserved around me. Jessica never skipped from elementary school to high school. I would either go to her house or invite her to come to mine to study and play with me. She would then scold me on the head with a pen. It's a great saying, but it's so stupid that if I don't help you, you'll be doomed. Michael, how many times have I explained this straightforward issue? Are you stupid as a result of Jessica's excellent tutoring? I should have smartened up by now. Our grades were always first and second, and we were inseparable. Her mother often joked that we were like siblings, even suggesting we should be arranged for marriage. Every time she said that, it blushed and remained silent, though I was incredibly happy. Who would like Jessica? She was so beautiful, so outstanding, and she had a special affection for me. But soon Alex appeared. Chapter 3. Alex was unlike any guy had ever met, to put it nicely. He was unconventional, to put it bluntly. He was a delinquent. He transferred to our school in his sophomore year, supposedly expelled from his previous school for causing trouble. He never paid attention in class and often skipped school to hang out while other boys wore their uniforms neatly. He fled a tight black bank top, showing off his faint ts and tattoos, attracting the girls' attention. He enjoyed dating and had been with almost every attractive girl in school. He didn't care about the gossip, and even you used it as conversation fodder. He mingled with street thugs, often kissing girls with dyed hair in public and riding his motorcycle, making the girls scream. He was a striking figure in a sea of conformity, drawing many eyes, including Jessica's. Despite their differences, Alex and Jessica came into contact. Alex sent Jessica a second letter, quartering her and on with a cheeky grin, tying her hands over her head and blowing white smoke in her face after she threw away Alex's first love letter. "Jessica, let's date a lot of boys because I like you." I assumed Jessica would turn him down, as she had done with others, but she lip-flustered for the first time, her ears growing scarlet, and no one dared to pursue her in that way. When I was waiting for Jessica at the school gate, I frequently saw Alex with his arm around her neck, smiling and teasing, "Your childhood friend is waiting for you. Want to do homework with him?" His friends would laugh. "Yeah, Bond KN." Jessica said that Alex was unique and a ray of light that brightened her life. I felt uneasy and scowled at Jessica, but she simply gave me a quick look before joining arms with Alex and leaving without saying anything to me. Jessica went home and studied Michael's, eagerly waiting. Alex turned around and gave me a big smile, Hingemo King. Alex didn't like me and would allow Jessica be with me, so I stood there for a while before being left alone, head down. The year's final exams were the first time I passed K, surpassing Jessica to become the top of the class while her grades fell. Jessica stopped seeing me and always rejected me coldly. She stopped going to the library and helping me with my homework, and she began skipping school with Alex to go on dates with Street PGS, and even drive her familyless car for Joe rides with him. Jessica's parents were furious, and her teachers begged her to go, but she seemed to be in love with Alex. Mrs. John asked me to find Jessica, even though I knew she wouldn't listen, but I went for the girl who had once called me stupid and promised to go to Tingwa with me. She was now wearing a short skirt and fishnets, and she was holding a talking stick. "Oid, are you going to lecture me too?" I clenched my fists, enduring the pain as I begged, "Don't we agree to go to Oxford together?" I paused, almost beseeching, "I know you like Alex, and I'm not stopping you from being with him, but can't you wait until we get to Oxford?" Alex came up, put his arm around Jessica, and kissed her cheek after she only sneered. He then turned to me and gave me a sarcastic, condescending smile. My face grew pale as I looked at Jessica, who averted my eyes. "Let her make her own decision so you won't keep hanging to someone else's girl. Jessica is my girlfriend. What do you think you are to her? What's your relationship?" As I stood there waiting for Jessica's decision, the setting sun was a fiery, blushing red. After a moment, she smiled sarcastically and then gave Alex a deep kiss in front of me. After kissing him, she looked into his eyes and asked, "Does it make me sad?" I quickly left and got into my car. Alex and O said, blowing out smoke and nudging Jessica to choose what or me to this day. Jessica was looking for me frantically and palely at the door, but she didn't see me. The pavement stretched her shadow long and thin, making her look almost frail. I leaned back in the driver's seat, lit a cigarette, and closed my eyes slightly as the smoke filled the enclosed car. I had never smoked before, but after moving overseas, it became a habit. Tobacco does not cause joy, but it does help temporarily forget problems. The afternoon I went looking for Jessica, a street thug who had previously fought with Alex, arrived to settle scores, and I nearly burned to death. That's why I traveled overseas. The three of us were thrown into a van and severely beaten, with Alex suffering the worst of it and covered in blood. We were then left in an old warehouse waiting for the so-called boss. I heard that his sister had dated Alex and even had a miscarriage because of him. Later, she attempted to pastor Alex, but was slapped by Jessica. The thud cows let it go and brought his boss that afternoon. The injuries were mostly minor. Alex quickly awoke and successfully untied the ropes that bound us. The warehouse had 2 doors, and Jessica, who had always loved taking things apart, opened one with a wire. As we were ready to flee, the THS heard the noise and kicked open the door out of instinct. I turned to face Jessica, who instantly grabbed a luck and ran my hand, freezing it in midair and turning my blood cold. Alex even shut the door after him, trapping me. Since Jessica and Alex had fled, the thugs knew I was a childhood friend of Jessica's, and they took their resentment out on me. I hadn't thought about that day in a long time. When I was almost out of breath, the thugs set the warehouse on fire. The fire was so hot and dry that I cowered and even started crying, but all I felt was an overwhelming cold fry into the core of Chapter 5. I don't even know how many blows I received, and I was beaten with a stick until one of my legs was broken. However, I didn't die a kind passer. Bess saw the fire and called 911. Fortunately, the fire department was close by and came quickly. After being rescued, I spent half a month in the hospital, and when I woke up, I told my parents one thing: I don't want to be here because of this incident. I used to love basketball, long-distance running, and skiing, but all of that was impossible after our families completely broke apart, and the Jayan family, led by Jessica's parents, were turned away every time they came to escape this terrible place. My parents decided to immigrate overseas, so I changed my contact information and cut off all ties to the past for a decade. I never saw Jessica again, and I was 17 when my youth ended suddenly in such a tragic and ridiculous way. Wait, Chapter 6. On January 27th, I went back to China to take over the family business. I didn't anticipate seeing Jessica, but as soon as I did, the memories of those 10 years came flooding back, and I started to avoid her. In the negotiation conference room, Jessica was still in the P gesture of having just opened the door. She stared at me with a gaze that seemed to freeze her entire body in place. After a while, her lips started to tremble. I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but I even saw her eyes starting to redden. Jessica, the name that once brought so much joy to my life during those first 17 years when I was 17, pushed me into hell. To be fair, it was all Jessica's fault that day she chose Alex and not me. I don't harbor much hatred toward her, but I don't want to see her again. Emily asked me what was wrong, and her query suddenly startled me out of my emotional rut. I calmed down and said, "It's nothing." During the negotiation, Jessica and I were both preoccupied. I was nervous and wanted to leave right then, but she grabbed me by the elbow and murmured, "Michael," with bloodshot eyes. "That day, it was you. I've been searching for you for years," and then memory suddenly came flooding back. The leg was in excruciating pain, the flames were burning, and I couldn't endure any more intense action. I quickly withdrew my arm and said, John, please be considerate of yourself." Jessica uttered those words with trepidation. "Michael, I understand exactly wrong you did that, Michael, and I've been thinking about that date ever since. I regret leaving you so badly." Suddenly, a woman who was around 5 feet tall and fully blocked Jessica's view moved in front of me. Emily stated that her town was being a little mocking, but cold business is business, and if you don't care about gossip, you still need to think about our company's reputation. Jessica scowled, surprised, and said, "Please step aside. This is between Michael and me, her old acquaintances." Emily gave me a quick look, and I was annoyed and didn't want to talk anymore. Emily turned back and sneered, "Sorry, Miss Chan, but we have a meeting coming up. If you have something to say, let's save it for another time." She firmly took my hand and led me out the door. Chapter 7. After seeing my ex, I began having trouble sleeping frequently. When I did manage to sleep, I was plagued by nightmares. The scenes were always burning infernos red and searing in the suffocating black smoke. Jessica would hold Alex's hand and coldly push me into a B. I would wake up sweating and panicked. I took a day off, not wanting to stay at home and not knowing where to go, so I wandered aimlessly. When I came to my senses, I found myself standing outside my old high school. I stood there for a while when suddenly someone approached from behind. It was Jessica. I hadn't closely examined her last time, but now 10 years had changed her quite a bit. She was taller, her figure was no longer as thin as in her teenage years, it was now more curvous. Her face was adorned with mature, elegant makeup, yet when she stood there in a sleek black trench coat, I could still see the 17-year-old Jessica. The girl who used to scold me for being D while patiently tutoring me was now a shadow. In her place stood the person who had abandoned me. I automatically scowled and backed away to go, but Jessica called out to me. After a lengthy silence, she added, "Helly, Michael, I must apologize to you. I've been searching for you for years, and I've been thinking about the day I regret leaving you." I sulked, wondering who the hell is saying these things now, but damn, it's already been done, and an apology can't make it go away. Jessica made an effort to grin. "I realize it's meaningless, but I just want to make it right. Would you please give me another chance?" Expressional, I said. "I don't want to see you again," Jessica bawned on me. "Let's stay strangers," she repeated, her voice tinged with agonizing difficulty. She stepped forward, appearing somewhat agitated. "Michael, I understand that you despise and resent me. You can reprimand or strike me, but after all of our time together, you want to be strangers. I was stupid." Her voice wavered at the time, but I sincerely regret it. I clenched my fist as a wave of mixed emotions swept through my head, and I nearly used all of my strength to fight the urge to physically confront her. "Jessica, please stop being so shameless. Does your regret mean I have to forgive you? Do you even know what I went through? How dare you still stand in front of me?" Jessica's forehead wrinkled in agony, rendering her unable to speak. To be honest, did I hate Jessica over the years? Of course, at first, but not to the extent that she did, so she preferred Tex and picked him over me, which she felt was justified. However, what was my fault? Who could I blame over the years? Perhaps it was just my destiny to experience this. I never anticipated her apology, and all I wanted was to never see her again. From behind, Jessica called out to me, her voice babbling in terror. Michael, did you truly like me back then? It seems so absurd that you would declare that you liked me as I continued to walk without stopping. As I was walking past the street corner, a man in a faded jacket stopped abruptly, surprising Michael. He removed his sunglasses and smiled, asking if he remembered me from Alex Chapter 8 at the commercial dinner with Emily. I had really liked Jessica for years and had waited for her for years, but young love is as brittle as paper in the face of such tragedy, and I don't want to see her ever again. I've never forgotten you. I've been thinking about you all these years. Jessica could see that Alex had fallen on her. His suit was too small, his ankles were exposed, his once cocky attitude had changed to slickness, and his stomach was slightly protruding. He had obviously gained weight. I looked at the scar on Alex's profile. After traveling overseas, my friends who were powerful and wealthy had ambushed Alex, killing him. He didn't know who had done it, but he was unfortunate to get into more trouble, get expelled, and find work. My contacts in China kept tabs on him, sabotaging every job he attempted to get, until he resorted to robbery and was sentenced to 7 years. I had someone watch over him inside, and his suffering was much worse than mine. Jessica doesn't say anything, and I know you blame me. Alex's angry eyes stated, I know you haven't forgotten me, but I was also afraid. Remember how much you liked me? He gave her a gentle touch. For me, you even sacrificed Michael. The foolish infatuation of youth was now exposed as bitter reality when Jessica abruptly pushed him away, her eyes blazing with anger, and her voice was cold and unrelenting. The thing I regret most in my life is saving you, she said, looking at Alex up and down and down. 10 years later, Alex, who had once been a favorite young man, was now a jobless ex-boyfriend. They were from completely different worlds, and Alex never again came in front of me. Alex was terrified by her stare, and his mouth gaped, unable to speak. Jessica laughed suddenly. I turned away and lit a cigarette. What a miserable fate. The cow isn't very big, but with 8 million people I never thought I'd run into people from my past again, but here they were one after another. I also didn't think Jessica would have moved on from Alex completely. Jessica seems unconcerned about anything, but she's really very stubborn when she wants something. I thought she would be with Alex forever, but their breakup was as sudden as it was at the dinner. Alex was still there, and he came over to me with a drink, seemingly forgetting what Jessica had said about the past events. He said, It's been a while, Mel. I turned to leave after staring at him in silence for a while. If Jessica's choice of Alex was understandable, then Alex closing the door on me was the last straw. I'm not sure if he did it in retaliation or just to save time, but I know that I detest the person in front of me, especially when he shows up casually. I took a deep breath and realized that there were too many people around to lose my cool, but Alex kept grabbing my arm. We're old classmates, but did you forget how you used to chase Jessica? He laughed while putting his arm around my neck, chasing her like a dog, but she only liked me. He kept teasing me while attempting to pull his powers on me, so I put my drink on the service tray and untied my tie. I then punched Tex, causing him to turn his head, leaving the words caught in his mouth. I drew back my sore fist, and my gaze grew colder. Would you dare strike me? Because it was his first time in such a place. Alex's eyes flashed with resentment as he covered his face and yelled loudly, My Michelle, how dare you hit me? What are you? Everyone in the vicinity watched, taking in the spectacle as though it were a clown show. After noticing the chaos, Jessica rushed over, worried Michael. Are you okay? She looked me up and down to make sure I was unharmed before glaring at Alex, who was on the ground, in disgust. Why are you still here making a fool of yourself? Didn't I tell you to leave? She asked, as Alex's voice gradually became quieter. I casually took the handkerchief the secretary handed me, wiped my hands, and tossed it aside. I watched Alex from above security as he clenched his teeth and attempted to communicate, but I told him to leave. Two tall, thin security guards pulled Alex out in a panic. He called out for Jessica, but she didn't even look at him. I was a little annoyed and shoved by Jessica as we were leaving the banquet hall. The autumn breeze delivered a chilling sense of loneliness, and I felt cold all of a sudden. Emily followed me and handed me a coat she had prepared. "Who was that idiot earlier?" Emily asked. "I asked you last time about that J person. What did she do to you?" I grabbed the coat and absorbed its lingering warmth. I hadn't told anyone about what had happened after my accident because I was reluctant to bring it up, but now I'm not sure why. Perhaps it's the cold autumn night or the warmth of the person next to me. After a long silence, I finally spoke. Chapter 99. Emily was quiet for a long, and then I smiled a little. Tragedies that happen to other people frequently have a humorous undertone, so it's normal for her to feel contempt. But she slowly embraced me, blotting out the darkness of the night. I muttered, "Isn't it pretty ridiculous that all that was left was her warmth?" Emily returned some of those whispers, but not all of them, and I couldn't help but smile. She didn't say anything particularly heartfelt, which surprised me. When the younger guys at the company flirt with Emily, who is a little navy, she assumes they are having troubles or are exhausted from too much screen time. However, her presence made my internal wounds less unbearable, so I asked her if she liked me. "I'm not gullible, and I don't enjoy pretend games. Emily is a lovely girl who has shown me a lot of kindness, therefore it would be dishonest to act otherwise." In the little night light, Emily's face became noticeably crimson, and finally it crept to her neck. Her eyes expanded, reflecting my smile. Over the years, a lot of girls have expressed interest in me, some of whom were pretty good. I thought she would deny it, but instead she just stared at me and said, "You just figured that out." I was speechless and avoided her gaze. "I don't want to hold you back. I really don't want to be in a relationship right now. I once liked someone, but when unrequited love ends in such a painful way, it really scares me." I'm afraid Emily seemed a little disappointed, but she managed to smile without showing any signs of gloom. I tried to force myself to make a move, but I usually failed at the last minute. Only her presence has been tolerable, though. "If you could please don't push me away, Michael, I'd be shocked." Emily was in really good health. Although her demeanor was a little more clear, many men would still be fascinated in her because of her similar family history and appearance. Suddenly, an unidentified emotion, a bittersweet take, rose in my heart, and Jessica returned to serenade me, anxiously explaining Michael. "I'm furious because I had no idea he would show up today." She didn't complete her statement. Emily's cheek took a hard slap. Emily truly HD, not just threatening me. Jessica, although I was confident in Emily's strength, she delivered a powerful blow. Jessica's daughter and Tagger nearly fell, and she had blood dripping from her mouth. Emily's face clouded in disdain. "You still have the audacity to come here? This is between Michael and me." Jessica's expression likewise became icy as she wiped the blood from her mouth. "I don't care about you or me." Emily nonchalantly rolled up the sleeve of her $40,000 shadow coat. She asked my boyfriend, "It's none of my business, Dad of here," and he said, "I'll hit you every time I see you if you come near Michael again." I was taken aback, but I soon realized that I hadn't denied Emily's claims. Jessica was shocked, and she gave me a disbelieving look. "Boyfriend, are you with her, Michael?" With a note of cynicism, Emily linked her arm with mine. I don't know much about Miss Jang's family history or appearance, but she appeared Jessica is self-aware. If Michael hadn't picked me, would he have picked you instead, an older woman? I remarked quietly as Jessica's face went white. "Jessica, just go. I don't care about your college or your previous pay." Jessica's face went completely white as she stepped forward with tears in her eyes and coughed, oblivious to Emily's presence. Michael, it's incredibly difficult to see you again, and I sincerely apologize. You have no idea how I've been living these past few years, so I'm pleading with you to give me another chance. I'll give you anything you desire. I've spent 10 years trying to find you." Emily's eyes were wide. Hey, I'm angry. Would you like to fight? I halted her and gave Jessica a serious look. I don't hold it against you for what transpired at the time, and you don't have to make things right, but I sincerely hope I never see you again. Do not appear before me ever again if you genuinely believe that you owe me. Jessica's expression was filled with deep anguish before she smiled bitterly. Okay, if that's what you want. Elle agrees with Chapter 10 or 10, but I didn't think that would be my last encounter with Jessica. Her name was mentioned in the local news when a man shoots a street vendor out of anger and immediately passes away. After Alex Colleen let go of Jessica and chased her persistently, Jessica had nothing left but hatred and contempt for him, so she beat him up until he had nothing left to lose. One day, as Jessica was entering her firm, Alex became so enraged that he ambushed her, stabbing her repeatedly with deadly intent. By the time the ambulance arrived, Jessica had already lost her heartbeat. This drove Alex nearly to the edge of survival. Alex, coated in blood, chuckled. Mania K shouting on the street, Jessica, you believe you are unique. You are the most conceited person, and you should die. His public murder was witnessed by many and caught on surveillance footage. There was no question about it anymore, and the court sentenced him to death right away. Before I left, I went to Jessica's grave, where her tombstone showed a picture of her at 7:10. I was holding my hands in my pockets when the girl with the black hair and the wind suddenly appeared before me. She had lovely and shaped eyes with a subtle tenderness. I asked Jessica why she hadn't agreed to skip her grade, and she scoffed and turned her head away. If I leave, what will you do, a fool? You might not be able to get into college and end up screwing in screws. When I turned around, the 17-year-old girl put her chin on her hand and said to the boy across from her, you still can't solve such a simple problem even after all these explanations, but will you do without me? I pouted. I'm not that stupid, they just talking nonsense. She looked at me with a faint smile and ruffled my spite hair. I closed my eyes. Those were memories from a long time ago, once I hadn't thought about in ages. Jessica had changed beyond recognition after the age of 17, but now that she was gone, I remembered her youthful face once more. The faces faded away, leaving nothing but emptiness. After all these years, maybe it was always time for us to say goodbye, but this farewell came so late, Jessica. If there is another life, I hope we never cross paths again.